Hello and welcome back to the Cocked Dice. In this week's video I'm tackling the Imperial Fists chapter of Space Marines. So the main objective tonight is going to be up armour a Space Marine, which I know sounds a bit mental because they're already heavily armoured, but they're Imperial Fists, they're good at siege defences, and so we want to kind of reflect that in the model itself. So I'm using a standard intercessor from the intercessor box. You mainly want the ones with these separate shin pads, because we're going to carve the knees off, and that's going to be our first job tonight. So we're going to replace them with these bits, which are, I think they're groin pieces from the Terminator kit. Either way, I've got loads of them and they're awesome, and they're about the same size as a Primaris knee. So I'm not worried about saving these, so I'm literally going to carve them off as quick as I can. Just cut through the knee, and then we're going to start working around the front of the knee, taking this off here just in sections. Don't try and go too fast here, and be super careful if you're cutting towards yourself. So just keep working your way down until you're happy with the cuts you've got. And when you finish that, you should end up with a piece left over like this. So I'm going to get the other one done, and then we'll get these stuck on the model. So while we're waiting for the legs to dry off a little bit before we do some more work on them, I'm going to replace this guy's chest piece with this part here from the Castellan Robots kit from the AdMech. It's one of their front chest pieces. It's about the right size for a Primaris chest. So what I've done before is I've stripped the eagle down. This time we're going to go right back and take this torso plate off as well. So I'd start with the eagle, just take your knife and very carefully cut towards the neck piece. Don't go too hard because we don't want to ruin this piece here. Just strip it down in layers. Don't worry about the top surface at the moment because we're going to take the next layer off as well. So as you can see there, we've cut both pieces off. Just be a bit careful how deep you go. Make sure you don't cut right through to the centre. And then clean the neck piece off as well as you're going. Makes it a lot easier to see where you're at. I'll finish this off. I'll be back in a minute. Now once you've cleaned off his chest, you'll also need to just clean up the back of this piece. You can see this little raised bit here. So again, we're just going to take a knife to this and very carefully just follow the curve round and trim this flat like so. So we've got the two parts cleared up, and as you can see there, it fits pretty well. What I would say is this piece is a little flatter than the curvature on the chest. So you've got two options here. You can either try and level off the front of the chest here, or we can scrape around in here and attempt to level it out a little bit. I would suggest. So we'll do a bit of both here. We're going to take a knife and just run it down the centre here. You could also do this with a file and just smooth out the centre and try and get a bit of a bigger curve as this goes round. So now I've pretty much got this as flat as I'm going to go. There's going to be a bit of a gap there, but we will use a bit of green stuff to fill that later. So get this glued on. Just try and make sure it's lined up as centrally as possible and try and get these curves to follow round like that. That's pretty good. You can see it's a pretty good fit. I think I've got it slightly off centre there. Yeah, it's really close. We're talking about 0.5 millimetre difference on either side there. So again, that's going to need a little bit of time to dry, so we'll pop this to one side for a moment. In fact, what we'll do, before this dries too much, we're going to get his legs stuck on because we're going to need them to dry before we do the work on the knees. So while that's drying off, we're going to work on his right arm this time. I've grabbed an arm from the Reaver's kit. You know I always like these arms. I want his hand. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to take out his forearm. I'm going to swap it out for this part here, which I think is from the Death Watch kit. Correct me if I'm wrong there. So I'm going to cut the wire just round about the elbow, cut that either side, and then make 2 cuts here and here just to fix it off. First job is going to take his pistol off. We don't want it. I'll try and save the pistol. So a quick cut down behind the ammo clip. Through there, and we get the bigger, slightly sharper knife out and cut straight across the top of his hand to the ammo clip. There we go. You may need to give it a bit of a wiggle on the way down. There we go. If you're using a pistol hand for this, then you'll just need to clean up around that finger a little bit because it usually has a trigger guard on there. Now, as I mentioned before, this is a Reaver arm, which means it comes with the weird small Reaver shoulder pad on his right hand side. So we need to whip this off quickly. You've seen me do this before. You need a pair of clippers or a big knife. We're just going to trim around it really quickly and just slim it down so the top of the arm will fit inside a Space Marine shoulder pad. And a lot of chopping later, and you can see I can get a shoulder pad on there quite nicely now. So moving quickly on, we're going to take his hand off just behind the wrist mount there. Straight through his hand. Don't lose the hand, we need that again in a minute. I'm just going to clean it up so it's nice and flat. Then we're going to take the Death Watch hand and we're going to cut this hand piece off. There we go. We're going to very carefully here, because I want to try and save this pipe. Cut up behind the pipe. I can't do this on screen and see it. I'm going to try and get the knife in behind the pipe and the elbow and just work around, slowly just sawing in and out. And I've broken it. Oh well, it was worth a try that. So I'm just going to take the pipe off entirely. You'll just have to have the comms unit there. And the same again, I'm going to get the big knife out because it's sharper. And just cut straight through here, saving the little comms piece. And the final bit of this is going to be cutting out a bit of his arm to fit. Now, quick measure here. In fact, I want to take it right the way up to the elbow by the look of it. I thought it might be a bit shorter, so we are going to do exactly that. So I'm going to take a knife right down by his elbow, straight through. And I managed to avoid his elbow. Oh, look at that. And again, I've cut this at a slight angle, so we're just going to trim this and clean this up here. And then, oh, hang on, I need to do his chainsword. So this is a left-handed chainsword from the Assault Intercessors. So whip off the hand off here, and we'll sort the bottom out later. Clean that up a little bit. Where's his hand? Just need to take off the base of the pistol there. So now it's time to reassemble the arm. So it's going to be really important you get all this lined up nice and straight. Otherwise he's going to look very, very strange. So there we go. I don't think I've managed to lengthen it too much, and it's fit on quite nicely there. Okay, so before we do any more on him, I'm going to pop the chainsword and the pommel to one side, just let that arm dry a little bit. I'm going to try something a bit experimental. If this doesn't work, you'll not see this section. So one of the things I realised the other day is these shoulder pads fit over one another quite nicely. And I want to really bulk up this guy's shoulder. We're going to do some pretty hefty work on this. So first of all, we want to cut off this piece here. We don't need it. It's going to make the shoulder way, way too big. So I'm going to do it flat onto the board and then just cut downwards and round it. Take off little sections at a time. Like so. Then you've got the edge there, and we're just going to take a knife and run it around very carefully. Try and keep this as smooth as possible. Then just scrape it or file it back down again. So you can kind of see the lines I'm going to cut here. Across, down, across, up, and across again. So mimic this sort of shape, but lift it up a little bit. And this is going to sit on top of his normal shoulder pad. I'm going to start by taking a strip off the bottom, cut the diagonals, and then just trim out the edges. So I'm going to get on with that somewhere where I've got a bit more room to move than in front of the camera. So there we have it. That's broadly the shape you want. You can spend as much time leveling this up. I could do with just trimming a little bit more off this bit, but all intents and purposes, that is done. And as you'll see from the shoulder, it fits perfectly on top of the normal Space Marine shoulder pad. So I'll just finish this off and get it glued together. So I'm waiting for the arm to dry. I'm just going to nip back to the legs. Now, these groin pieces have a fairly lengthy peg at the back, so we need to trim this down, but we don't need to take it all the way. Probably about halfway down, I'm reckoning. So just take a knife and we're just going to trim layers off this and get it down to about half its current thickness. So we can see there, that is a pretty good fit over his knee. Now you can put them on upside down like so, or you can fit them as slightly wider knees like that. I think I'm going to go with this way round, but feel free to do it either way you fancy. So when you're placing the knee pads on, you want to try and align them with the rest of the leg, making sure they're kind of facing the foot. So you've got a straight line running from the top here, right the way through, down to his foot. A little bit off. It just kind of adds to the effect and ensures that the model looks a little bit more natural. Okay, final bit on the body. So the final bit on the body is we're going to grab this loincloth, this loin armour from a Mark 3, 4 Marine, whichever this one is. One's from Horus Heresy era. Cut straight across the top here, just above the belt line. I'll have a little trim down either side, get rid of the belt. So as you can see, I've trimmed it up a little bit further and it now sits above his knees, so it's not like this catch them as he walks and looks a little bit more natural. So now we're on to green stuff time. So you don't need a huge amount of green stuff for this, just a small ball will do. We're going to take a little bit of this, and all you need to do is around the edges of this arm plate here, is just put a tiny bit of green stuff. It's not so bad on this side. And just work it around this plate. Just helps hide that edge where it's stuck out a little bit. So if you keep the outer edge of the blade nice and wet, you'll find you can just tuck it in as you go around, and this will make sure this plate merges pretty seamlessly with the normal Marine chest. So as you can see there, we've hidden that joint pretty well. Now you might want to put some behind his knees just to clean these joints up, but I reckon they are clean enough that you're not really going to notice it. The only other area we're going to green stuff is just around the join where these two bits of shoulder pad meet up. So we're just going to again get a bit of green stuff and just push it in there. Nice wet tool, and just work it around just to clean up that seam just a little bit. So there we have it, that is nicely smoothed out there. So now we basically just need to assemble the rest of him. The only other item of note I've not really mentioned yet is the head. I've gone with this head from the Infiltrator's Incursors box. I just like the comms unit on it, so we'll drop that in, probably looking this way in a minute. So I'm going to get him assembled, I'll be back in a minute. So I've just added some additional pouches and ammo bits there from the Stern Guard kit on his side. But for all intents and purposes, he is complete. So if you hang around for a minute, you'll see a painted version of him coming up right now. And thanks for joining us here at the Cock Dice. Why not like this video and add a comment below? It really helps boost the channel. And while you're at it, if you click on the icon below, you can subscribe to the channel for all the latest updates as soon as they're live. Why not check out some of our other videos and playlists? You can click on the ones on screen right now. Take care, and we'll see you next time.